These are going to be the best decks to climb with to Legend, and the first one's going to be Unholy Death Knight. It probably isn't that surprising. It has the highest win rate on Hearthstone Replay for Diamond through Legend and high top 1000 Legend. I personally went 17-3 with it and got to Legend myself today, and overall the deck is just really good at creating fast, sticky boards with the Necromancer as well as the Rancher. Around turn 6, you play Grave Strength with your hero power, and usually you get about 12 damage out of it, and if somehow you don't win there and your board gets wiped, Lord Marogar is just so broken. Oh my gosh, turn 8, if they don't have an immediate response, you win the next turn. The next deck on the list is going to be Big Demon Demon Hunter, and I'm super excited about this because Big Demon Demon Hunter has been really bad for a long time, and out of nowhere it becomes like a top 4 win rate deck according to Hearthstone Replay. I played it and went 12-3, and my 3 losses were to Big Demon Hunter, Big Demon Hunter, and Big Demon Hunter. All 15 games I played with this deck, a Big Demon Hunter won. It's insane. It beats basically everything. If you're able to get a Feldscale Evoker out early with a coin or a Raging Fell Screamer, turn like 4, 5, or 6, it's just unbeatable. You also resummon a ton of big demons with All Fel Breaks Loose, and have some pretty decent removal as well with Emolition Aura, Unleash Fel, I-Beam, so you don't even lose to aggro that hard. This deck is actually just really good. Next deck on the list is Pure Paladin. You already know it. I'm not going to talk about it for too long. It's got really insane stats. It's pretty dumb how fast it's able to snowball things with the Disco Maul, and if those things aren't enough to win you the game, the Countess is usually enough to finish your opponent off. The next deck on the list is going to be Frost Death Knight, and I thought that nerfing the attack of Overseer Frigidara from 5 attack to 3 attack was going to kill this deck. I'm serious, I thought it was going to drop by about 5 to 6% in win rate, but apparently nerfing that and making it so that way you can't randomly generate Frostrim's Fury and Mirror Manipulator did basically nothing. They're still able to overkill you by like 10 HP on turn 7, still one of the highest win rate decks in the game, and if you want a cheap, effective, fast deck, this is probably one of the better options. The next deck on the list is going to be Undead Shadow Priest. You got some pretty good survivability with your minions with the Undying Allies as well as the High Cultist. You've got good direct damage with your hero power, Shadowed Spirit, as well as the Rotting Necromancer. And you got decent removal against aggro with the Shadow Word Undeath. The reason why this deck is so low though is because my personal experience with this deck was a little bit unfortunate. I went 15-12. Still good, but it definitely felt like it had less damage than a lot of the other aggressive decks that I put on this list. But definitely still good and pretty good for people on a budget. The next deck on the list is going to be Totem Shaman, and it's a little bit less consistent than some of the other decks on this list. We're kind of getting into the tier 2 category in my opinion, and the main comparison is to Unholy Death Knight. Both of these decks try to do the same thing. You want to flood the board early, and then you want to pump up your board with things like Anchor Totem, Flanktum Totem, Grand Totem Eyesore, Stone Ray, and Bloodlust. The difference is Unholy Death Knight can create a stickier board, and Grave Strength is just a better Bloodlust. I will say, Totem Shaman being able to get the Thing from Below and Gigant Totem is good into certain matchups that can't deal with really big minions, but most of the time Unholy Death Knight is just a better version of this deck. The next deck on the list is going to be Face Hunter, and again, I'm putting in tier 2 because I think it tries to do what Frost Death Knight and Shadow Priest do, just a little bit worse. You do have more interesting win conditions. Mukla could make your opponent overdraw a card and is really good on 6. Jungle Jammer is able to get you potentially King Crush on turn 6, which is a ton of extra charge damage, not to mention a ton of early pumps with like Bunch of Banana and whatnot. So like, it is good in some ways, especially against Paladin. If you have the Aerosmith and like a ton of bananas, you can get rid of a bunch of Divine Shields. But for the most part, I just feel like the other 2 decks do what this deck does better. But if you want to play Hunter, this is probably the best Hunter deck out there right now. And again, it's still good as about a 52% win rate on HS Replay. So give it a try if you want. The next 2 decks are going to be good for high legend specifically. It's going to be Miracle Rogue. Miracle Rogue is a very complicated deck to play. You have to play a lot of cards very quickly to generate a giant minion. You have to know what to do with a ton of randomly generated potions off of Putricide, as well as how to keep them protected with Shadow Step. And overall, it's just, there's a lot of thinking that goes on with this deck, so it's definitely not for the faint of heart. I do think that if you know what you're doing with this deck, you can climb with it at any rank. The problem is if you are playing in like, you know, bronze, silver, gold, maybe even platinum, and your understanding of the game isn't quite as high as some other players, you're probably better off with a more aggressive deck until you get slightly better at the game in general. The next deck on this list is Tony Druid, and the reason it's so low is because it struggles so hard into aggro. When you're dying turn 6 or 7 to like Grave Strength or Frostrim's Fury or Shadow Priest, it might seem like this deck is bad, but this deck has so many different reliable win conditions for multiple matchups. You've got Mishmasher and Attorney at Maw to wipe any board that has ever existed. The Jailer and Tony locks your opponent out of the game in control. You have a Nubercon, Underking, and Zoc to fight for board into a more mid-range matchup. You've got Astalar as a backup win condition and the Hero Power package to help you against aggro. Like, this deck seems on paper like it would be so good. It just struggles so hard against aggro that it hasn't quite pushed into that tier 1 yet. Last but not least is my own personal pick, and it is going to be Skeleton Mage this time. Overall, I played Skeleton Mage for not super long, but I went 6-1, and it felt really good. You have pretty decent board wipe and survivability with armor off of the Artificer, Armor Vendor, some Freeze, Solid Alibi, and Cold Case. You're able to get some pretty massive boards with Deathborn, especially against aggro things like Unholy Death Knight. And then last but not least, you have really good late game value with Kel'Thuzad, Grand Magister, as well as Infantized Magnitude if you're playing into a more control deck and you need just that, you know, infinite value. So overall, this deck is probably not as good as a lot of the other decks on this list, but I will keep playing it and keep you updated on how good it is. But it feels really good to me in the first initial sample size.